Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Hasnina binti Kalang with metric number 059516, and I will be presenting on the topic of war crimes. So first is, what are war crimes? War crime is considered when civilians belonging to the opposing party are put through unnecessary suffering for no apparent reason. Instances such as these are regarded as war crimes. However, whether or not they are tried as such depends on the number of people that were killed during the occurrence. In contrast to genocide and crimes against humanity, war crimes are violations of international law that occur within the context of an active armed conflict. Examples of war crimes include willful killing, torture or other inhuman treatment, willful infliction of great suffering or serious injury to the body or health, extensive destruction and appropriation of property, which are not justified by military necessities and are carried out unlawfully and wantonly. In accordance with the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, serious violations of the Geneva Conventions of 1949 are regarded as crimes against humanity and are considered to be war crimes. Moving on to the historical background, at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, the law of armed conflict, also known as international humanitarian law, was codified. However, the concept of war crimes did not emerge until much later. The Hague Convention, which was adopted in 1899 and 1907, respectively make it illegal for belligerents to make use of certain weapons and strategies. In the years that followed, a number of additional treaties with comparable goals were signed. In contrast to this, the Geneva Convention of 1864 and subsequent Geneva Conventions, including the four Geneva Conventions of 1949 and the two additional protocols of 1977, emphasize the protection of persons who are not or are no longer participating in hostilities. Although certain violations of norms established by the Hague Convention and the Geneva Convention are considered to be war crimes, this is not the case for all of the norms that have been violated. However, international law does not contain a single document that details each and every illegal act that can be carried out during a conflict. List of war crimes can be found in the Conventions on International Criminal Law and International Humanitarian Law, as well as in the International Customary Law. The Geneva Convention from 1949 have been ratified by all of the member states of the United Nations, whereas the additional protocols and other international humanitarian law treaties have not yet achieved the same level of acceptance as the Geneva Conventions. However, many of the rules contained in these treaties have been considered as part of customary law, and as such, they are binding on all states and other parties to the conflict, regardless of whether or not the states have ratified the treaties themselves. This is because customary law is considered to be an integral part of legal system that have developed over time. This is due to the fact that customary law is regarded as its own distinct branch of international law. In addition, many of the rules that make up customary international law are applicable in armed conflicts that are neither international nor non-international in nature. This broadens the protection that is afforded in non-international armed conflicts, which are only regulated by Article 3 of the Geneva Conventions, which is common to all four conventions and additional protocol too. Next slide is how are war crimes prosecuted? Well, the International Criminal Court is an organization that, as stated on its official website, investigates and, where warranted, tries individuals charged with the gravest crimes of concern to the international community, such as genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and the crimes of aggression. However, over the past few decades, international courts such as the International Criminal Court have taken on cases of this nature, despite the fact that states have the ability to exercise jurisdiction over such crimes. This remains the case. During times of armed conflict, actions that are considered to be grave violation of the Geneva Convention are referred to as war crimes by the International Criminal Court. The intentional targeting of hospitals, historical monuments, or buildings dedicated to religious, educational, artistic, scientific, or charitable purposes is an example of a war crime. Other examples of war crime include the use of child soldiers, the killing or torturing of individuals such as civilians or prisoners of war, and the use of child slavery. Following the commission of crimes, the International Criminal Court launched preliminary investigation under the supervision of the Office of the Prosecutor to determine whether there is sufficient evidence of the crimes and whether they are of a nature that justifies the institution of criminal proceedings. If the offense does not meet the criteria for being classified as a war crime, or if the circumstances does not fall under the purview of the International Criminal Court, then they are unable to conduct an investigation into the matter. After compiling evidence and determining a primary suspect, the prosecution requests that the International Criminal Court judges issue an arrest warrant or a summons to appear in court. After that, the suspect is required to make an initial appearance during the pre-trial phase. During the pre-trial phase, 3 pre-trial judges will verify the suspect's identity and ensure that they are aware of the charges against them. After listening to the arguments presented by the prosecution, the defense, and the person who will represent the victim in court, the judges will decide whether or not there is adequate evidence for the case to be tried. Even though the hearings cannot begin until the suspect is either detained or appear in court, legal arguments can still be presented during the trial phase of the case. The prosecution has the responsibility of presenting evidence that proves the accused's guilt beyond a shadow of a doubt. After considering all of the evidence, the judges will come to a decision, and in the event that they find the defendant guilty, they will also decide the appropriate punishment. Suspects can receive a sentence of up to 30 years in prison, and in extremely exceptional circumstances, a sentence of life in prison. Despite this, both the defense and the prosecutor have the ability to appeal a verdict. The judge may also make it mandatory for the victims to be brought back home. However, in the event that there is insufficient evidence, the case will be thrown out and the accused person will be set free. The decision of a trial chamber regarding the verdict and sentence may be appealed by either the prosecutor or the defense. Appeals are heard by a higher court. Both the party who was found guilty and the people who were wrong can file an appeal against an order for reparation. After that, a decision regarding an appeal is made by the 5 judges who sit on the appeals chamber. It is never the same judge who made the original judgment who decide whether a decision should be reversed, modified, or uploaded after it has been appealed. This ruling will be considered final unless the appeals chamber make a request for a new trial. So to conclude, the precise definition of war crime has the potential to have a wide range of implications, both domestically and internationally. Having a minimum standard of war crimes helps those who advise combat forces to take potential liability for international war crimes into consideration. This is because a minimum standard of war crimes serves as the starting point for the prosecution of international war crimes in either domestic or international court. Unfortunately, grave violations of the laws of war are still being committed in a variety of different ways. In the midst of the disorderly progression of warfare and the ongoing development of the laws governing conduct in war, as international institutions and states seek to right this wrong, having a definition of war crime that is more straightforward will help ensure the coherence of a body of war crimes law. So that's all from me. Thank you.